editor of this magazine.
Yeah.
Out of art. She edits it with herself and Stephen Gray, some lug she picked up along the way.
That's her head.
Yeah. And this is only $5, really. It's really a terrific magazine. So there are some copies here. And let me call attention to the front of the door on the way out, if you go out that way. You will see it's also $5. It's a book called Native Tongue. It is the poems of the new poet laureate of San Francisco, Alejandro Murguia. And there are copies at the door. One of the people here, the heckler, is also did the cover of that book. Agneta Falk, she did the cover of the Native Tongue book. It's a very important book for the laureateship, actually, as it turned out. So that's also, just informationally. We're going to have two terrific poets today. But we're going to begin with an activist poet as well as an editor. She was actually the main figure in San Francisco who organized the first Occupy event in San Francisco after the September 18th. Was it September 17th?
September 17th. We started the same day.
And it was that day that the event was at the Trans-America building, wasn't it? Yes.
The Bank of America.
Bank of America, yes. And she's an excellent poet as well as editor, and she and James Cagney will read after her. We'll each read for 30 minutes. Let's welcome Sarah Page.
So I have a lot of poems to read, and some of them are short, so don't feel obligated to clap after each one. Maybe do the twinkle fingers like they do in the Occupy movement if you like a poem, and that way we'll get through these in my time. I've been working on a series of poems using the phrase "the space between." I found that it just sort of is something that clicked with me, that I thought was sort of a reoccurring phrase that I was finding in recent poetry, and so I wanted to focus in on that and write some poems with that. So these first few poems are from that series. A prevalence of tornadoes. We're all Kansas, it's so Dorothy, and the space between here and Libya is hieroglyphic, like mud, like denial. We protest, they arrest, it's simplistic. But the big screen TVs have pretty pictures on them to escape in, and there's a pill for every ailment, Southern comfort, a race to extinction. Eternity. It is in the space between then and now, like how sunlight reflects off objects, and that is how you see the object, reflection. And the sun, if you look at it too long, will cause you to lose your sight. Like how I tell my husband, I love you to infinity and beyond. And he says there's no such thing, because he has a rational mind. So I tell him it doesn't matter, I still love him that much. And just because he can't comprehend how much that is, doesn't mean it isn't true. The space between space. 1. It is where my thoughts go when they need a vacation. like when I'm taking a bath and I let my head sink back so my ears and eyes are underwater, and only my nose and mouth stick out so I can breathe. And I can't hear anything else but my heartbeat beating underwater. And if I'm lucky, my husband plays guitar for me while I bathe. And then, instead of listening to my thoughts or my heartbeat beating, I listen to his music. And I can even hear it underwater in the space between the molecules. And then this poem has a notation which comes from my husband. And the quote is, "Include when you zone out on the computer and don't hear me, or respond when I'm talking to you 10 feet away." This is the space between space number 2. It's where my mother goes when she stares out the back kitchen door. One day she told me all these years she finally realized she just really liked looking at this tree out there in the space between her garden and the woods. And then this one is followed by a note from my mom. "Hi Sarah, read your poems, love them both. The tree in question is a very unique tree. It grew there after years of looking out the back kitchen window while I was washing dishes, pots and pans and babies. It is very, very close to being centered out the back window. The fact that it grew there is my space between space. The place that many wouldn't understand, but perhaps some do. Love, Mom." Husband space. Sometimes I get so hungry, I tell my husband I'm going to eat him. Or I get mad at him and say, "I'm going to eat your face." Only I'm not really that mad at him, and I would never really eat him. But I do bite him sometimes, and mostly he just tells me not to do that. But sometimes he gets really mad at me if I bite him and he wasn't expecting it. And then I feel like there's a weird space between him and me, and I don't know what to do about it, until finally I just lay on top of him and say, "I'm sorry." Writer to audience. The space between you and me is mere inches. I'm with you right now as you read this poem. I'm making your brain do funny things and you like it. I might not even be alive anymore when you read this, but still you can feel me, or at least the essence of me, even if I'm not taking up space anymore. Snail space. In the space between a snail and its shell is a slime that reduces the friction of momentum. The snail with the most slime wins. Molecule poem. This poem lives in a molecule of infinity and does not make a big fuss about anything. My husband is a poet. My husband composes poems on an electric typewriter. The typewriter hums in anticipation of his keystrokes. Like a mantra, the typewriter is Zen. My husband activates the potential spiritual energy of the typewriter by turning it on. The space between his ears begins to hum in tune with the electric motor of the typewriter until they speak the same language, finishing each other's sentences. And I have written a few poems for paintings, which is something that I was inspired to do by Diane Prima. I've taken some poetry workshops with her, which are really fantastic. And so these are several poems that I've written for paintings. Poem for Pablo Picasso's Head of a Sleeping Woman. As she sleeps, the gravity of the world presses in against the edges of her face. Is she dreaming about preserving organic seeds for future generations? Perhaps she is a fish or a husk of corn, pushing through water or fibers to free, to feed, to sacrifice the smooth of her skin for the geometry of dollars. It is an escape art. Poem for Juan Grise's Book and Glasses. The man in the suit is an open book on a table surrounded by too many glasses for one to drink from. And then lastly, poem for Juan Miro's The Flight of a Bird Over the Plain, number 3. The bird is like me. The bird becomes me. I fly through the hole in the sky that is blue and leave the brown field behind. I leave my human body behind, leave science behind. I carry with me a string of eggs. They are black and white like science. I will bring them home to multiply. Red makes it real, makes it bleed. I become the bird, become free. Life is an incomplete sentence. And the next poems, several poems I'll read, are inspired by nature in some way or another. He sent his bird to her, and their birds then communicated their innermost desires and secrets with each other. And this is how they fell in love. Shyly at first, and without acknowledging it, until you couldn't tell their birds apart from each other anymore, and they were light as feathers. Tree says, stop, says, look at me, says, stand still, up straight, says tall, says now, says yes, says more, says breathe. Tree says, let your hair down, says laugh, says sway, says do not cut me down. Tree says, it is not your place to know the things the trees know. That's why only the trees know them. Tree says, everything is wind. The forest. The forest. It is where one goes to listen to the mute echo of tiny movements, rustlings of leaves. If you start and stop as the chipmunks do, you can hear it there and learn what it is. Birds like it, as well as people who like to be places where there aren't many others, so as to not get in the way of it. Some like the beach for similar reasons, but the sun is there. The sun is also in the forest, but only mildly and beautifully. It is there by way of the spaces between the leaves and branches of trees, like how the forest speaks to you telepathically if you listen and ask for it with your own quietness, becoming like the forest, becoming tree. No delicate thing is safe. Shells inevitably become empty, the way your brain holds thoughts, or how snails live inside them, temporarily. Living inside a shell, you're protected. No one can see your delicate nature without an act of violent penetration. In a boat on the Caribbean Sea, I saw a man stab a shell and rip out the animal living inside it. I put the shell to my ear, heard the ocean whisper, beware, No man is an island, and no delicate thing is safe. And then these are just sort of miscellaneous poems on different topics. This first one is called Typewriter Poems, and it was inspired by some poet friends of mine who started sort of like a pen pal kind of thing, sending poems to each other that had been written on a typewriter. Do I need a prompt, he asks? Do I have any unfinished poems? This is supposed to be an experiment, I tell him, for the girls. You can have notes on the side, he says, but that's cheating. Nobody just sits in front of a typewriter and writes poetry like they come out of thin air, like, oh, I'm just sitting here typing and a poem appears. I'll show him, I think. Poetry is always in the ether. Poets are nothing if not translators of silence, of air. All the words are there, and like a net catching butterflies, our minds catch the poems and give them to our hands to write down, sometimes. Or else language is a virus, burrows, and the meaning is in the act. Or the information is all around, but not in symbols called letters, consonants, and vowels. Typos like Freudian slips. A sloppy sleight of hand gets it all wrong. The disease of communicating in borrowed terms. And hardly anyone knows the real meanings of the words anymore anyway. No. There is no boulevard of broken dreams. Merely a large junkyard of false prophets, which spills into the oceans of defeated wombs, still striving to produce truth and beauty with broken instruments. I took the stranger's hand and said, "Let's dance," and tugged him to the center of the crowd. Surprisingly, he came right along. Follow the leader. I wasn't expecting to really be followed. Okay, this is good, yes, okay. Except now he has to take the lead, and I have to let him follow the leader. He's the man after all. So I say, I'll follow your lead, to ensure he'd know what was expected, but mostly to remind myself how it's supposed to be when dancing with a man. Please hold on. Every time the bus stops, we hear, please hold on, please hold on. A mantra for this day of birthdays, churches, parks, and prayers. An uncompleted pilgrimage to the ocean, like, what is the word for it? A marriage uncomplicated by sex? Unconsummated, that's it. Please hold on, please hold on. Arms touching, legs against each other, please hold on. What you want to do. What you want to do is incur a lot of debt. Just enough so you can still make the minimum monthly payment. But you have to have good credit. Pay your bills on time, good credit, lots of debt. Don't worry, be happy. Happiness directly proportional to debt incurred. Allowable debt inversely proportional to ability to pay back. Happy, happy, happy. But watch that monthly payment. And remember, for the price of a cup of coffee a day, you can help a child starving in Africa. Stop going to Starbucks, make your own coffee. But wait, you can charge your coffee to your credit card and still give that other cup to a starving child in Africa. No problem, don't worry, be happy. Bones. Bones have nothing to offer delicate heart when strings break. This poem is a voice collage. The headphones are over there. What did he say? Look, a balloon. But I want it, Mommy. Pick up a set of headphones for the audio tour. That way, dear. Here, take a Kleenex. The tour starts here. We have something special planned for you today. Pick your feet up when you walk. You look beautiful today. I feel sick. The tour starts here. Wait a second. You know I love you, don't you? And this poem is called Poetic Viceness. I'd like to get rid of all my vices. Weed and alcohol, then cigarettes. Someone once told me a person has to have at least one vice. So I pick poetry. I'm pretty sure poetry will never show up on a doctor's new patient questionnaire, like, how many of your blood relatives have abused poetry? At least I sure as hell hope not. Then he left the room, and when he left the room, he slammed the door. The windows shook, and they kept shaking, longer than was appropriate. Items began to leap from their perches. Shelves slid down, crashing into those below them. Then he came back into the room, flinging the door open as if it were a hot frisbee. He picked her up off the bed and held her in the doorway. Slowly, things started to not move again, and he waited, like waiting for that last kernel of corn to pop. Then she woke up and said, "Are we there yet?" This poem is called Pocket Lint, and it's for my friend Tom Weigel in Connecticut, who organizes poetry readings there. Have you noticed there is less pocket lint going around? Ow, what did you do that for? Of course I am listening. Can't I look at art and listen too? Do you have any pocket lint? What? Pocket lint? What for? I think it has been disappearing. Pocket lint? Yes. So what? Well, I always liked pocket lint. You know, like when you reach in your pocket and you feel that little something extra that shouldn't be there, and then you take it out to see what it is. Like it might be some strange treasure, and it's just some weird bit of pocket lint. I guess so. Did you ever put the pocket lint back in your pocket? No. Why? Did you? Yes. Well, you're just weird. Nobody does that. I always offer it to the wind gods. Birds make nests with it. This poem is called A Buzz, and it's for my husband, Stephen Gray. Channeling serious energy waves, navigating cosmic rays of thought, heavy. So gracefully he lifts you up and makes you smile, and you part your lips and bite one. Have to come up for air. With caterpillars in your stomach, he says he wants to take you there, and you believe it. And it's okay if you don't have a lot to say, because he does, and he does it well. And you can close your eyes, take a nap while he strums his guitar. Don't have to go real far to be so near it all. The good and the bad, it's all relative, like relativity. And degrees of separation don't mean much when he's not around, because he's everywhere. The French cafe, the beach, the pool, the tennis court, a doctor's office, open mics and cabarets, 1, 2, or 3-act plays, operas, tragedies, and comedies. He's in your shower, he's in your head. and you know that he will be well read. And then these last few are some political poems that probably a lot of you have heard before, but I'll read them again. No, we can't. We can't have green jobs because China makes the solar panels. High-tech cost of living to create 0 jobs. Harvard degrees really teach you how to waste money, and Yale too. The New Yorker prints boring poems mostly. We need a poetry bailout. Drum circle at the White House. Kill the TV and electricity. The Superior Depression is coming. And there's a hit show called Lost. Sounds like tossed, like votes and bags of tea off boats, docked at the piers of tomorrow's trespass against us. Zombies, fascists, and butterflies. I dream about zombies. They come out at night after their TV shows. They drink a lot of beer, too, which makes it easier for them to be controlled by the fascists. I'm not supposed to know this. The zombies think I'm uppity and rude if I mention it, and I'm wanted by the fascists for these thought crimes. The fascists came for me and some children I was caring for in a zombie dream. It was kind of scary, and we didn't want them to take us away, which was a thought crime in itself. But then, 1,000,000 white butterflies appeared in the sky. The youngest child pointed them out. The fascists looked at them in awe and left. It was a beautiful sight, all those butterflies appearing and scaring the fascists away. If only it would be that easy. And this is the last one I'll read today. It's called Living Without. She said she couldn't live without her iPhone. I'd told her Chinese factory workers who make iPhones were killing themselves due to low wages and poor living conditions, and she said she couldn't live without it. I couldn't talk anymore after that, and so I thought about how I want to live on a farm and grow my own food and not buy things that other people died to make for me, so that my miserable American life might seem easier, or like I somehow deserved people to die for me, like soldiers in Iraq or Afghanistan, dying for a truth and justice that the American way destroyed a long time ago, and oil. If we can't live without iPhones or oil or killing other people, then call me alien. Call me an illegal alien, I don't care. I'm not a good American, I know this, because I don't like to buy things made in China by people dying. And I can live without oil and war and pesticides and TV and the iPhone and Democrats and Republicans and suicide and the artificiality of real low, low prices, made low because, again, of dying people and pesticides and war. And if I'm a bad American because of this, maybe I am a communist. And how scary is that? Maybe I should be exiled to Cuba and not have to listen about TV shows and iPhones and war and people dying to make things I can live without. Thank you.